Hello and welcome once again to episode 130 of Code Completion. We're a group of iOS developers and educators hoping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing your code. My name is Dimitri and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
When we are writing new code against new SDKs, we have add available, right? And this works great until you're on like a beta version of Xcode, and then you need to run your code on a non-beta version of Xcode to submit it to the App Store, and everything kind of falls apart. You can go ahead and use canImport or check the compiler to like see if you're on a good enough version. But it turns out you can be a little smarter about this, and canImport actually takes an underscored property called version. Now, we talked about underscored properties last episode. And if you'll remember, it's basically a giant warning sign that says, don't use, it might change. But as with most things that have come to Swift and made it onto the internet, they will break, but they are useful. And notably, this is useful because you can get the version of a framework and only import the symbols from it if it matches a certain version. And that means that the code will ignore that if it doesn't. Which is very useful, turns out, for writing code with pre-release frameworks.
Yeah, that's cool. As opposed to the add available, it'll just like not even compile that, right? So that's nice. They go into this blog post, which I'm sure we'll put in the description. Talks about some advantages and disadvantages. We kind of talked about the advantages. One of the disadvantages is you have to kind of scrape that version of whatever module you're checking against.
It ain't public.
Yeah. So he shows how to do it. It's just this thing that you throw in the terminal, but you have to make sure that like the SDK that you want to check is installed on Xcode, and then run that terminal command, and there's a little bit of work for it. So he says that in the alternatives, he said, we decided not to use canImport for example, because the non-intuitive version number, it's like iOS 16.1's Swift UI, for example, is 4.1.17.100. So what they ended up doing instead was they did like pound if Swift is greater than or equal to 5.71 and if. So they kind of went a different way, and I don't necessarily know, can't really think off the top of my head. I mean, I guess it depends on how specific maybe you want to be. If you really need to check against a very specific module version, I don't know.
I mean, it's avoiding needing to remember the versions of Swift that ship, but you're swapping that out for more headaches, right? Because those version numbers are likely going to change throughout the beta process, whereas the version of Swift that's just going to be stable throughout the beta process, unless you're on nightly Swift versions, which is a completely separate, like you already know what you're doing at that point. You're not just using a beta version of Xcode. Ultimately it goes back to like checking the compiler version, which is essentially what we're doing here. Which works. I'm not going to say it doesn't, and that's what I've used in the past. But canImport is an interesting alternative, right? And they are kind of playing around with different ways of expressing this, because you could certainly see a usefulness in having like not knowing which version of a framework you're linked against, and compiling things one way if you have a high version, and compiling things a different way if you have a low version. So that is definitely useful. I'm not aware of any way that you can kind of tag a package, like a Swift package, with a version. I guess it's whatever Git version it uses, right? Maybe that's what it kind of settles on automatically.
Yeah, I don't know if this is quite what you're asking, but at the very end, there's
like how do you do this for your own stuff, right?
Like checking versions?
No, like give a version to a module that you write that's in Swift.
Yeah. I don't really think we do, honestly. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Not something I have to worry about, fortunately, and I suppose unfortunately.
We definitely live in a simpler world for the most part as iOS developers, but I'm sure this is something that developers on Linux are like, oh yes, we use this kind of thing all the time because it's all we have, and this
Poor
is
Linux.
likely why it exists, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Talking about things that exist that I had no idea about, there is a helper in the testing framework called Xcode Test that we all kind of use. That's like the only testing framework. And it's called XCodeUnwrap or XCUnwrap. And it does what you think it would do. It unwraps optionals. It just does so in a excellent type safe way, which I did not know existed.
Yeah, it's really cool. So they have a couple code snippets that, what you would probably do in kind of just thinking about like writing code the normal way is like guardlet cell equals cell as whatever cell else, and then you give an XCT fail with some description.
I've definitely written that.
Yep, me too.
That
100%.
exact case.
Yeah. So what you can do instead is like they have like an XCT assert equal for like item 1 as a string, and then the thing that it's comparing against is you can do this try XCT unwrap cell as my cell dot title, and you can do it that way. And so what happens, they sort of talk about if you're just going to straight up cast the cell in that XCT assert equal, it's just going to crash, and XC test doesn't really handle it gracefully. There's not I don't even know if it would give like a really good error message. So this XCT unwrap is a step further that says, XCT unwrap failed, expected non-nil value of type my cell. So a little bit better. And then what he goes on to do is he says he makes this thing called XCT cast, which sort of takes us further and lets you be able to kind of do the XCT unwrap, but also, let's see, where is it? Oh, no. He's not even using XCT unwrap in this. Interesting.
It's kind of like a replacement for it, right?
Oh, okay. I thought he was using it and then kind of taking it further, but he's just casting it using a guardlet. And okay, my bad.
Yeah, so it very much follows the same thought of using the XCT unwrap, but it's like more purpose built for what he needed it to do. And that is definitely something that you can be encouraged to write in Swift, right? I have in past applications written a whole bunch of XC test operations asserts that take different inputs and are more targeted to Swift types than otherwise. And they are very easy to write. You basically need to make sure that you capture the file in line, and then just pass it down the chain.
Right.
And once you capture that file in line, any error that gets presented, it will go ahead and highlight the original one in Xcode. So that is super nice that it does do that. And it's one more reminder of what I am missing out on a day-by-day basis by writing JavaScript. Just kidding. JavaScript is horrible. TypeScript is like way better. So I do want to put that out there. If you need to suffer in JavaScript, at least make it TypeScript. But it's still not as good as Swift. So I yearn for the type safety that is with actual types at runtime, and not everything is not a number, except not a number, because I don't understand it. It's too complicated. There's have you seen the comparison table for JavaScript? It's like 17 this way and 17 this way, and it's like this crazy constellation of X's that may or may not even be symmetric. I don't make any claims. Like if you do it one way but not the other, it's like,
have fun memorizing that.
Oh, you do not. You look it up every time. And that's how you don't write mistakes in JavaScript, because it doesn't happen.
I was going to ask, I've known about TypeScript. Obviously, I've never used JavaScript or TypeScript. Can you use TypeScript anywhere that you can use JavaScript? Or are there like exceptions with frameworks that you can't use one or the other?
Okay, so there's a lot.
I just like opened this huge...
Yeah, so JavaScript is what runs in the browser.
Right.
It also is what runs on the server through a thing called Node. So works in both.
Yep.
TypeScript is like a preprocessor version of JavaScript that has types
Yep.
that will verify your types when you compile it. When you compile it, you're actually just stripping all the types. So you're not actually compiling anything. There's no functionality that comes. There is some code generation that comes. Like if you use a enum in TypeScript, oh boy, it's this thing. It's not a Swift enum, that's for sure. It tries to look like a Swift enum, and then it just like stabs you in the back. Anyways, back to TypeScript. You basically strip all the types, and you're left with plain old vanilla JavaScript. Nothing changed there. And then you have that's done through a thing called Babbage, I think. I don't know, or TypeScript. There's like a lot of layers that just like turn things, transform them, crunch them together, and replace all your variables with A, B, C, D. Like you've seen that when you view source before, I'm sure. It just gets turned into something.
Okay.
And then it goes through this thing called Webpack, and I'm not too sure what Webpack does, but I think it packs it further. And it replaces all the ABCs by AA, BBB, CCC, or something not very easy to parse. And then it delivers that to your web browser via a .js script that may or may not be inline. So, yeah, long story short, TypeScript fully compatible with anything because it is JavaScript with extra syntax that does not exist in JavaScript yet.
Right, yeah.
And can't exist in JavaScript because now more people use TypeScript, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
Small win.
Small win. Apparently Microsoft maintains it. I did not know that, but like all the headers interfaces, I don't know what they're called. They're .t.ts. That's how you know that they're like fake. But all of those are all like prefixed with like Microsoft Corporation. So yeah, they are apparently stewarding this thing to success. As opposed to, I think, Microsoft has TypeScript, Google has Go, Mozilla has Rust, right?
Yep, I think so.
And Apple has Swift. And Google also has Kotlin. Because apparently not many people use Go. Or Golang. Because Go was too short of a word, so they needed to bastardize it a little bit more.
Yeah. Also a board game. Or I don't know if you call it a board game.
It is the classical board game.
Well, yes.
Many years ago.
It's a game. I don't know if you can like put like that with Risk or something as a board game. You know what I mean?
Oh, it is way more complex than Risk.
No, I know. That's Risk, what I'm saying. They're just way different.
AIs Risk for... I don't know if you saw this in the news recently, talking about Go. It turns out that humans were able to demolish the AIs at Go. They basically use an AI to find weaknesses in the AI's strategies. And then let a human like learn how to do that strategy. And then once a human learned it, the AI did very poorly.
That's cool.
Like 9 games out of 10. It was a small win for humankind. It turns out that we are still adaptable. We just need to give us a few more years and we'll figure it out.
Just use AI to be AI.
It's our creation.
That's true. Apple is apparently wrapping up 15-inch MacBook Air testing as release looms. So what this would be is a 15-inch MacBook Air with the same resolution as the 14-inch MacBook Pro, which I find like kind of weird. So it would be less sharp, less PPI.
That was their MacBook Pros up until that point, right? They were all less sharp.
That's true. So this would be on 3nm. It would be like the M3 generation. It wouldn't be an update to the M2 MacBook Airs that we already have. So interesting that they would go this way. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess my thoughts on MacBook Airs versus Pros are like, now that we have the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and I suppose if this were to kind of overlap on the other side to the 15-inch, I don't really think the screen density is like a huge thing for me, but something that I've noticed is when I go over to my parents' house and I bring my MacBook Air, they have a lot of windows in a couple rooms, and so it's really hard to see even at full brightness. And so that's like the only time that I notice the brightness difference in my MacBook Air as opposed to the Pro, which I assume has 1 or 200 more nits of brightness. So that honestly has been the thing with that. Like when I get a new MacBook, I may go with a Pro just to get a slightly brighter screen rather than like size. Like I actually really like the 13-inch size, so I probably just get like a 13-inch MacBook Pro, assuming that the brightness is actually better on there. So
Yeah, I think this is a fair product to come out, because most people, when they do need a laptop, and I think this has been said ad nauseum already, they just go for the larger screen because they need more space.
Yeah.
Not many people are gonna go the whole extra mile and get like an external desktop because or an external screen for your desk, because then you're not really using the laptop for what it was meant to, and that's like moving around. Yeah. That said, the 16-inch MacBook Pro is like an absolute unit. So like maybe this is a happy ground between the two, right? Where it's like nice and light, it's still performant, but it's not necessarily hindered by the pure mass of the surprisingly thin but still massive laptop.
Yes, that reminds me of when I started teaching at a boot camp. Someone brought one of the 17-inch MacBook Pros, and that thing was a chunker, dude. I was like, like it's crazy how much 2 inches of X and Y makes. It was massive. It looked crazy. So yeah, the 16 inches were too big for me. I also just have the 14-inch MacBook Pro for work, because it just sits in clamshell mode all day. So yeah. But it's, I guess, kind of to wrap this up, or at least my thoughts on it, I think it's cool and also interesting that they're going both ways between the Air and the Pro, kind of like getting into each other's segment. And I wonder how that will do. I don't know if it'll do poorly, but it's an interesting tactic to kind of have less segmentation and just more overlap, and making the user decide between things like brightness and, I suppose, sharpness, pixel density on your thing, because we're all using the same chips between all of the MacBooks now. There's no 1 billion Intel SKUs that we're using as processors in these, so that's another way that you can differentiate, is I guess just other features about the MacBook itself.
Yeah, I think that they will likely sell less MacBook Pros as a result of this, right? Yep. Because most people don't need one, but they'll probably make more money out of volume sales. That's because fair. A whole lot more people will be buying this computer versus not buying one, right? Or going with a Windows offering, and being burned by that X times in a row.
Yeah. Side note, kind of random. I've just been noticing that there are some killer deals on like M2 Mac Minis, like $500 or something. So if you're in the market, like check out some deals on, I don't know, Amazon, Best Buy or something. But that and like MacBook Airs have also been going for like super cheap, like $650 for the MacBook Air or something. So probably a good time to pick one up. I don't know if they're just trying to get rid of stuff before the M3s come out or whatever, but yeah, they're still very capable. I still love my M1 MacBook Air.
So you mentioned this is the M2 Mac Mini, right? So does a 2012 Mac Mini like also qualify? Because I got one of those up in the clouds, and you can't restart it. If you restart it, it shuts down. So that's a problem. I would like to replace that if I can get M2. If I can get $500 worth for that 2001 device, then thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I don't know if you get $500 for that, but I also have, that's what's running my Vapor app for my home speaker system, is a 2012 MacBook or Mac Mini. It still works great because the only thing that it's doing is running this small vapor application.
Yeah, I have to log into mine every few months, not to restart it because, again, I said if you restart, it just shuts down, and I don't want to keep bugging the people at the data center.
You can. There's a setting I have on mine because I have that whole speaker setup on a smart switch. You can just have it like restart when it turns off.
It turns out it does not do that.
Oh, it does for me. That sucks. I'm sorry.
Ask me how I know. I don't know if there's like a battery that's like dead on the inside or something. That's probably what it is. But yeah, every now and then I just have to log into it, go into Activity Monitor, find the thing that's gobbling 20 gigabytes of RAM, and just like force quit it, and everything is fine. Like, things are so much more stable. This thing has been on for literal years. And like I just have to go in and kill Directory D, like the thing that runs all users.
Yeah.
Like, just restart it. And
awesome.
like everything is fine. So I just want to like put that out there. Apple, the thing that you had before, software wise, A+. Yep. It looks not as pretty. That's a given. But like stays on forever. Just keeps chugging.
Yep.
So maybe consider that. I don't know. And in other news of things that last quite literally forever, Angry Birds still a thing. Also, and they are now going to have a new cousin named Sonic.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have Angry Sonic.
SEGA is also a thing still somehow. They're hanging on by a thread, and I guess that thread is not really a thread because they bought Rovio for $770 million. Wouldn't have guessed that they had that much money, honestly. That's pretty crazy.
Rovio now owns a majority stake in Sony. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
That's usually how those deals go. It's like, oh yeah, they're buying, and then the other guy gets to own it. It's like, wait, what happened there?
Yeah. Pretty interesting though. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly was not expecting that.
No.
I didn't even... the Sonic movie, great success. The Angry Birds movie, less success. So that's clearly how these video game companies are doing.
Yeah.
Mario movie apparently has like already skyrocketed past best video game movie in
really?
like earnings or something.
Oh.
Yeah, like
I heard
it's
it wasn't
doing
that
an excellent
good.
job.
Oh, that's crazy.
On standards of video game movies. I'm not talking about
okay, fair.
Yeah. I'm waiting for it to come out on Max, not Max. HBO. I'm sure it probably would end up on HBO, right? Or would it be on Netflix? Netflix has had all the Illumination stuff lately.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, that's a good question.
Anyways, I'm waiting for it to show up on one of those because I am not entering a theater, probably for the rest of my life, because the COVID, it scares.
It scares. They kind of grody.
It's a thing.
Yep.
But yeah, it's surprising that both these companies are still a thing.
Yeah.
It's surprising that Sega is actually Sega Sammy Holdings. Thanks, Sammy. And it's surprising they still had that much money to buy to think that Angry Birds was worth that much. Like I got it for $1. Thanks, App Store. So I had an idea this past weekend. And for those listening, this past weekend was the same weekend as last episode because we're recording this in one go. Magic. Yeah. But I had an idea this past weekend, and that was with regard to all the privacy and security enhancements that Apple has kind of been adding to iPhones. And lately, like there are settings if you're a high-risk user, like you're a journalist or you're a diplomat, or you are a billionaire, you might want to lock down your phone more than most to prevent bad things from happening to it, namely with your like safety in mind. And like, although that's good, it also puts a target on your back anytime someone realizes you have that kind of security on, right? Because a lot of countries, like China, for instance, they will want to see and get access to your social media and your phone, right? And something to log you in a database of something to make sure they can imprison you upon entering their country. I don't really know. I'm making that stuff up. But it doesn't sound pleasant, to say the least. And like I would have second thoughts traveling in general, but traveling to a country that I knew in advance would want to see the contents of my phone just to enter it. And I guess that's within the country's rights to do, right? It's you are entering there, you do as they do, kind of thing. But it did get me thinking as far as what could our devices do better for us to help better protect us in those situations. And one thing that I have the tremendous ability to do that most do not is I have a small stockpile of old iPhones. So I could choose to not bring my main iPhone with me. I can choose to set up an iPhone brand new with no iCloud signed in, nothing. It's just a device with a SIM in it. And while I'm in that country, I can use it to text and browse the web and use the maps, yada, yada. Take pictures. And then when I come back, I can sync them up. But most people don't have that privilege. So I was wondering, what could Apple do as a software company making software for their wonderful hardware devices to kind of help with this? And one thing that came to mind was an exploration of what a second user on an iPhone might look like. On the Mac, for instance, if you use Touch ID, you can switch between users with different fingerprints. And that got me thinking, well, what happens if you were to enable kind of a dummy account with a separate PIN? Like, you can only get to this dummy account with a PIN. So when someone asks you, hey, what's the PIN for your device, you can tell them straight up, it's 7562. Sorry for the person who that's your PIN. Like, don't use it. So that would kind of sign you in immediately and go to a home screen of an account that is not signed into anything, and allow someone to essentially look at your phone without seeing anything that's on your phone. None of the apps, none of the accounts. You might be able to even set it up with an account just so that way it looks less suspicious. Or download some apps on it, but not sign into them. Namely, it's a completely separate environment. And it's essentially there as a trapdoor, as a honey trap, right? I think that's what it's called. Honeypot. In server security, you basically leave something open to let people fall into it and get stuck in the honey. And then you can basically use that to know who is attacking you. And in this case, you can go ahead and use that to allow people access, kind of like a guest user, to your device without making it obvious that it's a guest account, right? Make it look like it's a real one. Put your name on there, just don't put your iCloud. So that's something that I've been thinking about. And then I brought this up to you, and I started thinking further, where, like, hey, what happens if you did not get a chance to tell anyone what your account was? They took it from you first, and then they just start trying using one of those devices that basically enters pins in via the lightning port, and then just rapidly cycles power to prevent it from like storing the fact that you tried once, twice, 3 times. What happens if like 1 in 100 pins that get tried, it just logs into that secondary account as if they guessed the pin?
Right.
You know, it's not going to do it instantly. It's going to do it completely randomly. It doesn't need a like save state in between. It just picks based on a seed. And maybe that can allow people to kind of maintain their privacy when law enforcement gets access to their device and you refuse to tell them what your password is. And they're like, okay, we're going to figure it out on our own. And they try to figure out, and they get access to an account, and it looks like they got access to it. And meanwhile, in that instant, because they use that method, it instantly wipes the main account, like gone. And like, what better way of protecting yourself than have something that doesn't even leave a trace that it existed if accessed in an unauthorized way, and lets whoever is trying to access it feel like they've accomplished their goal and it would only be too late when they realize they actually did not.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, and yeah, I mean, I'm not in any kind of situation where it would be useful to me, but I still think it's a great idea, and I would probably do it anyway, just on the off chance that something happens. And like you said, for people that are in those situations regularly, it's all the more powerful and useful for them. And like the idea of just logging them in after they guess some random password, and it stays that, so they can keep logging in and thinking that's the right thing. Meanwhile, it's zeroing out the SSD on the other accounts. So it's like there is no trace of anything else that was there,
and it doesn't even need to zero it out. It just needs to wipe a single key, because everything is encrypted. Everything looks random anyways. That's the whole point of the encryption, right? So if you just wipe the key, you have no idea if stuff is there or not. And that's the key piece for something like this to be successful. Like, it would be instant that everything is gone.
Yeah. And I guess showing if they check the storage and say like, oh, there's this weird amount of storage that's inaccessible because there are 2 users or whatever. It just instantly makes that accessible and everything. So it seems like, I mean, I feel like iOS is already quite well suited to this idea because everything is already containerized. It wouldn't be a hard thing to just be like, oh yeah, here's a new container for this same app. One container doesn't need to know that there's another instance of storage for this app, for Instagram or Twitter or whatever. It could be a completely separate thing and make it look as legit as possible. Throw on some random photos or whatever in the photo library and just make a separate iCloud account. Or it would be fun, or I don't know if this would be a good idea, but if you could sort of like, you can have the iCloud private relay, just relay things back to your main email, have it sort of relay that stuff back to your actual iCloud account, but keep it separate from the iCloud account while you're in that separate user or something. I think there are some really cool ideas that it would be very cool for Apple to explore.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention, it would be great to have, like, there's on your lock screen, if you don't know the password, you can still make an emergency call, right? Yeah. What if you could still use an iPhone for things that the iPhone is capable of rather than just phone calls? Like, what if you needed to quickly, like, text something?
Check maps or
check the maps.
Yeah.
Or, like, gain access to a quick guest account, right? How many times does someone say, hey, does anyone have a phone? I need to check something. Like, you just hand over your device, no question about anything like sensitive
security
leaking. Like, that could have so many wins, right? And not just limited to iPhones, like iPads too would be like, if only we had users on all these things. I think iPads technically do with like classroom
education
stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's hastily put together at best. So I don't know if it's really suitable to this kind of stuff, but like, it feels like we're very close to multi-user support on these devices. We just need to like go a little bit further, or maybe we're never going to get it because we're going to have glasses, and the glasses are going to come with a just piece of glass that you carry around with you, and that's your phone, right? And then there's no point in multi-user. It's like, hey, can you pass me your phone? And you just not even thinking about it, you pass them this slab of glass.
Have my glass.
And they're like, wait, what am I supposed to do with this? So yeah, that's something. The world we live in. This week's episode of Code Completion is once again brought to you by Explain It Slowly. Have you ever wondered how anime is made, or how old TVs work, or even why you start picking up other people's accents just by hanging out with them? Welcome to Explain It Slowly, a podcast where Lynn and I explore any and every topic, from technology to food, twice a week. We've covered everything from SSDs to food comas, and can't wait to share what we've learned next with all of you. So open up your favorite podcast app and search for Explain It Slowly to learn something new with us every week. We want to thank Explain It Slowly for sponsoring our show. Search for Explain It Slowly on your favorite podcast app, or visit https://explainitslowly.show to learn more. So Spencer, I have a code completion tip for you. And this is kind of semi-inspired by last week's tip where we can use underscores to do cool things. This thing also includes an underscore, but not for the same reason. So say you have a module, right? You are writing a bunch of Swift packages. And in this module is something private that really only this module needs to know about. But you also need to access it from another module, right? There's some leaky abstractions. And it would be really nice for this one private thing or this one internal thing to actually be accessible outside of it, but only by this one other module, right? You don't want everyone to use it. You just want to make a little tunnel just for this guy. It turns out that is totally possible. And that is possible using something called an SPI tag. So this is @_SPI, and you can put it next to the things that you want to expose, and you specify who you want to be able to consume them. And then in the other module, when you import that framework, you put an SPI import tag in front of that, and that will allow you to access it. So SPI stands for System Programming Interface, and I will link a wonderful article that goes in tremendous detail about these by, I think we've linked to the same person last week when we were talking about talking about the canImport stuff. Yeah. Marco Edinger, sorry. And he goes into a lot of detail on the SPI stuff as well. So definitely check that out. It's not something that everyone definitely needs to use, but if you're designing a complex net of frameworks and this is something that is useful to you, it is excellent to know about, right? And once again, the SPI tag is underscored, so it is technically considered private, or in this case, a feature preview of Swift. It's not something that is expected to stay in the state. It's more to kind of learn from and learn where it's most useful. Namely, it becomes less useful if you use the new package modifier that's coming soon to Swift, because if you have one package with multiple modules, then they can all kind of interlink within each other. So I think that's where this kind of thing is going. But it is nonetheless useful to know about if you want to go ahead and start using something like that today rather than waiting for it.
Nice. As kind of a follow-up on that, it being sort of a feature preview, would you be able to ship something with this in there or no?
Yes, it's all compile time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is not something that is handled at runtime. And most things in Swift are not runtime. Like, you could technically use a pre-release version of Swift with a release version of Xcode, right? Once you compile it, that's the way it is. The only problem is Apple platforms contain the Swift library. So anything that you use that is dependent on that library, namely Swift Async, Swift concurrency, like that was a big thing that was all runtime or mostly runtime, and not available on older systems. So Apple needed to go ahead and patch that in. So that's something that is sometimes the case, but not the case every time.
Gotcha.
As always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Please be sure to follow us on mastodon.social @codecompletion to know when new episodes go live, and feel free to toot at us if there's ever a topic you'd like for us to dig into. Most importantly, as a small podcast, please be sure to share this with your friends and family who are also interested in any process of app development. It's your support that enables us to continue doing this, and we hope to grow a healthy community around everything we discuss. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who's at Spencer C. Curtis. That's SpencerCurtis for joining me this week. My name once again is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buñol. That's DimitriBouniol. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
I have a mandatory commented out.
Mandatory. Okay.
It's required listening. And that is the wonderful, the awesome, the trailer to Tears of the Kingdom.
What?
Oh
Not
boy.
again. I never would have guessed we'd talk about that.
Oh boy, the music in this one.
Yeah. It's exciting. I'm stoked. Are you talking about the two that someone posted on Reddit?
No, the main trailer.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think we talked about it.
No, I don't think we
we?
did. I don't know. I'm not sure. But
Like,
yes.
not the gameplay. Just the main trailer that
Oh,
popped
sure,
up
yeah.
a Monday
Yeah.
ago. That was some exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to play that game.
It looks,
There's like so much.
every time it just looks better and better. I'm insanely hyped, and I got work approved off for a week, so that's all I'm doing for 9 days, baby.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
so excited. Yeah.
Oh man.
It'll be good.
That was one of the best decisions, not gonna lie, that I did when Breath of the Wild came out. I just took 2 weeks off, and I did nothing but play that. And that was something I'm never gonna forget, because I eventually went outside, and I was like, the world looks boring.
I can't climb this tree. I can't chop it down.
Well, it's just not pretty, right?
Yeah,
Like, you
that's
look
true.
out and it's like these gorgeous sunsets and sunrises every 20 minutes. It's like it's a visual dump of just gorgeous like landscapes. And now we're like, even that first scene on the new trailer, just like going through the clouds, that was just like stunning.
Yeah.
And then it's like the music starts picking up and it's like it hits you wham when the title comes on. Oh man.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
It'll be good. It was like a screenshot fest when I got Breath of the Wild, for sure. Just screenshotting everything, dude. So I'm sure it'll be like that again. It'll be good. It'll be way good. It's exciting, and I wish like my siblings played those games and I could kind of relish in it with them. I have my cousins that do, but
well, you could recap the story of Breath of the Wild in less than a minute, and get them up to speed.
about as fast as someone could speed run the game.
There wasn't much in that game, thankfully, for like newcomers to the series. I hope there's a bit more story this time.
I think it seems like there will be. If they've got like voice actors and stuff for like Ganondorf, I'm sure they do.
They had voice actors for the last one, and there wasn't much, Spencer.
Good point.
There wasn't much.
But
Ganondorf looks cool.
It looks like a kind of a hybrid between like Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. It's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
But like
also,
another
Wind
thing,
Waker. We got Chonky
yeah,
Ganon.
that's true, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that's cool is like Sidon is back. I love that guy. I'm so stoked.
You could fight with him or something.
Yeah,
I don't think that was a cutscene. That was just like straight up someone playing.
Yeah, I'm stoked, dude. It'll be awesome. So it'll be like it's a fairly close continuation of Breath of the Wild. Like all the same people are there, and that's awesome because I think the personalities that did exist in Breath of the Wild were really fun and stuff. So it'll be good.
Mm-hmm. They showed two bosses. Like there's that construct one that just like popped out of the wall. That looks cool. And then there was the Goma one that was like coming out of the ice storm.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's Goma. People are saying it's Goma. It has the same number of eyes and stuff.
That'd be cool.
I don't know what it is, but it looks terrifying, and I am terrified of it. The Gleeok looks terrifying.
Yes,
as
dude.
well.
I mean, like that's the cool thing is I think that's from like the very first Zelda game.
The very
ever.
first one, yeah.
But there's like a lot of more like diverse. Like it's not the same thing as Breath of the Wild. Like they're bringing a lot more to the table, and that's what has me so stoked. Is like it'll be a new experience. It'll be a continuation, but a new experience.
Here's a preview with what happens with the Gleeok. You get to a certain point, you chop off its head, and the thing goes flying and keeps shooting like fireballs at you. That's what the original did, and that's going to be freaking terrifying.
It'll be great.
Yeah, it's the Lynels. Like Lynels were terrifying in the original Zelda because they were just hard. Yeah. Lynels are terrifying in Breath of the Wild because you need to know how the combat system works. Otherwise, they will just demolish you.
Oh, yeah.
and all of these enemies just look like more massive versions of that. It's just gonna demolish you unless you know what you're doing. Though now you can put meat on an arrow and shoot it, I guess. So that's cool.
Yep, it's and put a shield on a stick and make it into a weapon, and there's a lot of possibilities, and that's what's exciting. And I felt that way with Breath of the Wild when it came out. It was sort of revolutionary, but they're taking it definitely a few steps forward from even what Breath of the Wild is.
Can we talk about their choice in showing Link's contraption? Little Army McArm face is like, I'm gonna get you. It's the one little finger popping out is like getting the lining up just right, and Link is just like there with a straight face. Speedruns are gonna be hilarious.
It's gonna be insane. I can't even imagine what kind of things they're gonna put together to. Yeah, it'll be cool.
Like you can basically do anything.
Yeah,
they basically showed us that like you can have a sane contraption, you can have your phallicopter if you want, and you can go ahead and just do whatever you want with the block with the block mech, right? And you take it seriously. That's all that matters. You need to go there with a straight face and poke the bokoblins off of the stone talus. I guess
talus. Yeah, have him just like. I don't know what to call it, I guess a prehistoric mech battle or something. It's pretty sweet.
It's like, come on, let me get your stone talus. Oh no, turn around. And then the talus hits you, and then the physics like totally wonks out, and the thing goes flying.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yep, it's exciting. I mean, we are less than a month away now, man.
So close.
Like 25 days.
They've been holding it out so well. Yes. Congrats, Nintendo, because you have been underselling this game maybe too much. Like no one was really kind of hyped up, but I think the hype is rapidly growing at this point.
Well, I'm glad it happened this way, because if they hyped it up 2 years ago or whenever the first trailer was, I would be dead by now just by like anticipation. So the kind of slow, like exponential ramp up, that's okay with me. I like that.
Oh my goodness. Do you think they showed off real temples and real dungeons?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they've got to have. I think that was maybe missing from Breath of the Wild, is like the temple experience, because like the divine beasts were okay, but they were short. And then it's like, okay, back to shrines, and that was it. So
yeah, they were the same thing too.
Yeah,
like all of them
visually.
I really did miss the traditional, like, this is dungeon the forest crawling temple with the kooky music that's specific to this area, and like a multi-room labyrinth to really like pick and solve a part. And yes, it's linear. Oh well.
Yeah.
It like really allows you to like stress your brain a little bit to really solve it. And that is certainly harder when things are not linear. I will give Nintendo that. And they did a great job kind of making shrines feel fun and unique, but nothing really on the level of a dungeon from even Ocarina of Time. Like the later dungeons were notorious, like some were notorious for being hard, right? The water temple. People hate it not because it was frustrating, it was because it was hard. You had to like not be a child to really solve that in a good way. And if you were not a child when you solved it, you have fond memories of it. If you were a child, you gave up quickly because it was too difficult, right? I think more of that would be better. Not that they're gonna suddenly go and change that right now, right?
No, but yeah, I think again, just like everything else we talked about, like it'll be an evolution. I would assume that Nintendo knows. I think our opinions on this, on like Breath of the Wild and the dungeons and stuff, and everything else about Breath of the Wild is probably pretty well known to them, and I think they've taken the formula. They know it works. They're going to tweak it a little bit and make it a little bit more
They just focus on weapon durability, Spencer. They didn't contemplate anything else. They just fixed the weapon durability. That was it. You can fuse weapons now, it makes them more durable. Same game. Which I hope is not the case. I doubt There's something coming from the sand. Like, it was such a cool reveal. And then Ganondorf, like, screaming. That was fun. Maybe Ganondorf from the back having glowy Snapey hair. That was fun. Snaky, sorry. I guess it's kind of like Snape. But yeah, some folks are saying maybe that's Demise. Maybe that's Ganondorf when he's mid-hydrating. Who knows?
It'd be cool, a return of Demise. That'd be kind of a good bookend to the timeline.
It's just restart it, Nintendo. Just like cycle it. Why not? Just go all in. It seems like Zelda's back in the past for whatever reason. Then she goes Super Saiyan and like blasts all these Moldugas out of smithereens. Like, where were you during the last calamity? That would have been useful. That's like so much cool stuff. We got to see the tears. There's a lot of tears. Everyone's got tears. Maybe Link does not use the tears. Maybe he just like gets the essence of tears, like homeopathy. Like he mixes it in his hand a little bit, and then it works out for him. So much unexplained. We know nothing about this game. That's what Nintendo has showed.
But that's the best part, is it's only a month away. Again, like if it was 2 years ago that they were dropping all this, I would be so pissed off. I'd be just a husk of a man by now, waiting for everything. So it's good that
that was waiting for Breath of the Wild, right? Nintendo's future was uncertain. We didn't know much about the Switch. We were like waiting for this hypothetical Zelda to come out on the Wii U. They showed us like one or two things of it, and then it's like nothing. And it's like no one knew what to expect. And then the Switch is announced, and then Breath of the Wild was announced, and everything was fine after that. I don't think we had that same like drasticness with Tears of the Kingdom, right?
Maybe not. I think for everyone that's stoked about, like, that's into it, is like way more hype though. Like, I don't know, for Breath of the Wild, it was the release game for the Switch. So like,
what else
were you gonna buy? Well, yes, that too.
Like, the way people emulate it is via the Wii U emulator.
It's true. It runs dang good with an emulator, man. It's fun to play in like 1440p at like 120 FPS. It looks so good. I'm a little bit sad about how choppy I'm assuming Tears of the Kingdom will be, unfortunately.
Maybe it'll be better, right? It's made for Switch this time.
Yeah. And
Korok Forest. Well, they just got rid of Korok Forest, so maybe it's not an issue.
Yeah. So, it'd be nice to actually get it up to 1080p, not 960p or whatever they were running it out. Yeah. Give me all the P's.
All the P's. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that. By the time this comes out, it will probably be like just a few weeks away.
Yeah.
Oof.
We may or may not be recording an episode that week. We'll see.
It may or may not be solely focused on Tears of the Kingdom. We'll see. That's the Tears of the Kingdom special, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can't wait.
Me neither.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.